everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new video. Many of you have asked to see more ideas on coloring embossing folder designs. So I have two cards to share today. They both actually feature some stamped images from Simon Says Stamp's STAMPtember collaboration sets with both the Greeting Farm and Riley & Company. But I want to preface the video by saying that I want you to focus on the techniques that I'm sharing today for the embossing folders, and remember that you can swap out the stamped images for anything you have in your stash. So I'm going to start first with this pink snowflake card that I'm going to pair up with the STAMPtember collaboration set with the Greeting Farm, which is really cute. I love the snow theme of this, and the cute little imagery that coordinates with Anya is just adorable. So I'm going to make a background here to have behind my stamped images. First, I'm going to ink blend with bubblegum ink. Now, I'm making a pink sky, but you could swap this out for another color if you want. I'm going to ink blend around the edges of this panel and then bring it into the middle, leaving that middle section a little bit more on the lighter side. Here is an embossing folder that I'm going to use. This is Snowflake Visions. This is a great design for the holidays and winter cards. I'm going to put it into my embossing folder and then run it through, and of course that leaves us with this really cool pattern. But to enhance it, I'm going to use a detail blending brush and Sweets ink from Simon's Pawsitively Saturated Ink Collection to color each of these little snowflakes. The way I do this is I give this ink blending brush a very light touch across the paper. I'm not pressing on the paper as I apply the ink. I want to make sure that I only get the ink on the raised surfaces of my embossed design. So that's going to give me these really cool snowflakes colored in, and it really makes them pop off of the card. I'm going to set that aside and work on stamping my images for the rest of the card. I've picked out the snowman, the bunny, a hat for the snowman, and of course Anya, who's the main image from the set. I'll stamp these with black ink onto Hammer Mill white cardstock, and then I picked out some fun Copic marker colors that I thought would coordinate nicely with my background. For the snow, I actually chose to use a light blue, gives it a nice frosty feel. Then for Anya, I wanted something that matched nicely with the pink colors, so I went with a little bit more of a blue, violet, purple, and that's going to color in her snowsuit. I did color in her hat with pink to bring in more of that pink color. I'm also going to use that pink on some other areas of the imagery, including the hat for the snowman and also the bunny's jacket. There are coordinating dies available for this stamp set. I don't have them, so I'm actually going to fussy cut my images, but the dies would be great for cutting all of these pieces out. Finally, I colored her hair with a few E markers, and then I used a couple of really light E markers to color in the skin of her face. Now that I have my images ready to be attached onto my card, we're going to start adhering everything together. I'm going to actually turn this into what I'm calling a snow globe edge-to-edge shaker. I'm putting all of my images actually on the panel that's going to get wrapped with my plastic and filled with sequins. So that way it looks like these images are actually in the snow. It's a really fun way to be able to get a snowy feel on your shaker card. So I'm using regular adhesive tape. This is Simon Says Stamp Terrific tape to attach these down onto my card project. This is a nice strong adhesive, and it's also flat, which is what we want because we want all these images to be adhered flat down onto the card so it doesn't interfere with the sequins. I'm also creating a little hillside. I freehand cut this, and I'm going to glue it right underneath my characters here to give them some place to stand on. I will add a little bit of shading to this, so that way it gives the snowbank a little bit of depth. I use those same blue markers that I used to color in the snowman and the snowballs to create that blue shading. Alright, so now it's time to make our edge-to-edge shaker. I have my plastic here that I've cut to be a little bit larger than my card panel here, and I'm going to cover 4 sides of this card with adhesive so that way I can start folding the plastic into the adhesive. I will leave that 4th edge of the adhesive still covered because I only want to fold over 3 sides at the moment. So that way I can fill this up in that last edge that has yet to be closed. That's our entrance to filling up the pocket full of sequins. I picked out this really cute mix of blue and purple snowflake sequins. I wanted to have a nice mix of the two. I didn't want to have too many of the large sequins in there. So I actually took out the larger snowflakes after putting in how many I wanted, and then I dumped in the purple sequins, and then I also added some seed beads, so that way it adds a little bit of a snowball effect. I think this is really fun. Once I filled up my shaker card, I then am going to get things moving, shaking it up really well to get all of those pieces evenly distributed across the card. And how fun is this, seeing all of those little sequins and embellishments floating around on top of your imagery? I'm going to stamp a greeting from the stamp set onto some black cardstock with embossing ink, and I'll use white embossing powder to sprinkle on top. I'll use my heat tool to set this. I always heat from the back first and then bring it on to the front side so that way I can get this melted beautifully. And finally, we'll attach that sentiment down along the side of the card with a piece of foam tape. And that is our first card, which features that really fun snowflake background. It has some really nice bold snowflakes because of the way we colored it with the detail blending brush, and the extra added special touch of having those sequins inside with your imagery creates a perfect snow globe for a winter season card. So I hope you'll try that idea out. That's a fun way to be able to make some fun Christmas cards or a winter birthday card. All right, idea number 2. So this one actually showcases a sentiment from Simon Says Stamps Riley & Company STAMPtember exclusive, and I'm going to show you how I colored each of these individual balloons using this really fun Party Balloons embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp. So I've embossed this onto white cardstock. This is all ready to go. And then with some white cardstock scraps and the die that's included with the embossing folder, I've die cut scraps of white cardstock that I can use as a stencil. And so now, with a variety of bright happy colors from Simon's Pawsitively Saturated Ink collection, I'm going to one by one color each of these balloons with my stencil. So this is such a fun way to create a really colorful background and make these embossed balloons come to life. You could do this with any embossing folder that has a coordinating die. All you need to do is cut it from a scrap of white cardstock, and then you can use that as a stencil. I actually recommend, if you're going to use multiple colors like I am here, making a stencil for every color you're using, so that way you don't have any cross-contamination of the inks, because when you're putting so much ink on top of something like a stencil here, there is a chance that the ink is still wet when you go in with another color, and then of course that could taint the color that you're trying to apply down. So it's really helpful to have a stencil for each one of your colors. So this is where we ended up. We have this really fun background, and you could leave it just like that, or I'm going to add a little bit more color with those same colors that I used for the balloons. I'm just going to go around the edge in a rainbow order to give me a really nice pop of color along the sides of the card. So this background is ready to go, but I thought I'd step it up a little bit further by spraying it with some spray adhesive. This is a permanent spray adhesive, and I sprayed it inside a box, and then while it was still wet, I took some Tim Holtz Distress Clear Rock Candy Glitter and sprinkled it over top of that wet adhesive. So this is going to give me a glitter covered panel, and right now it looks a little foggy, but once this dries I can brush off all the excess, and then that will give me a really cool sparkly background. It is beautiful. So this is the Riley & Company STAMPtember exclusive for Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to use one of the birthday greetings from that set, but you could use any birthday greeting for this card. Riley & Company actually has lots of really fun birthday greetings in their collection, of which Simon carries. So I'm going to stamp the greeting onto some black cardstock with embossing ink, and that's going to allow me to emboss this with white embossing powder as well. So I'll just go ahead and sprinkle that on, heat set this, and then I can fussy cut this out and put it onto my card. I did use some foam tape to attach that down, and then to complete the ensemble, I'm going to go ahead and put just a few sequins across this card, kind of trailing down from the top left to the bottom right, intersecting with the greeting so it ties everything together nicely, and that's going to create a really cool little bit of movement across this card. So this panel I adhered onto a white card base, and you can see now that the colors are much brighter because I was able to brush off all of that excess glitter that was sitting on top once the adhesive underneath dried. And I'd say it probably took about 20 minutes safely for the glue to dry, and then I was able to brush off the extra. Alright, so there you have it. 2 different ideas on how you can color your embossing folders to create some really cool effects with your embossed designs. I hope you enjoyed today's video and were inspired. If you are curious about any of the products that I did mention today, you can find them below in the video description as well as on my blog. Thanks for tuning in. I will be back soon to share more with you all, but until then, I hope you have a wonderful day.